Good morning, my dear party people. Senior Cap presents The Bear Bulb. My name is Buddy, and I am your host for tonight's conversation. Our guest tonight is a Montclair State University alum from the class of 2020. Since graduating, he has focused on creating and manipulating environments as a production designer for over 20 films. He has collaborated with directors like Acadia Barangos, Stephanie Rees, John Cacamo, Mikey Smith, and Annie Fleisch. He has also been an art department assistant for the 2022 thriller Smile and 2022 comedy Clerks 3. His production company, Six Shooter Shorts, just produced a new film, Bud, which has already been accepted to 5+ film festivals and has already won the best comedy short from the New York City Independent Film Festival. I welcome Zach Miller.
How you doing, man? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, thinking about film always on my mind, you know?
I think you were at a coffee shop before this. Where were you?
I was down at the Java Love near Bay Street, just down the road. Yep.
Java Love. Boone knows. What'd you get?
Oh, dude, I am a simpleton when it comes to coffee. I just get a regular coffee with cream, you know? Straight, regular black coffee with cream. I don't like to make it complicated.
I wish... You know, my family and everyone in my lineage is from Costa Rica. So, like, coffee out the wazoo. Even my family is part of, you know, getting coffee beans and stuff. And so anytime we come back, my girlfriend always thinks I smell really good because I just smell like coffee.
Yeah.
And I can never, literally, all of them drink coffee, like, all day long. Mm-hmm. They're like hobbits. Like, they drink, like... 4 or 5 times worth of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
My parents start drinking coffee sometimes at like 9 p.m.
Oh, that's what I do.
It's like
oh yeah.
How?
You gotta do some all-nighters, you know? You got a lot to do.
Well, I'd like to let's get straight to the chase.
Sure.
Why film? Where did it start?
I would have loved if you just said why, like just left it at that.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, no, that's an existential question. That'd be too long for this one. But with film, at least, that's a long question for me. Starting out when I was younger, I've told a bunch of people this too. With just, I always liked how movies resonate with people. You get a reaction every time you walk out of a theater. I remember. In elementary school, there was some friends of mine that made these little videos for the morning announcements to play. And I also remember everybody laughing at them almost the same time because they projected all the videos at the same time in the morning announcements. And kids were talking about it the whole day. And I remember that being one of the first times that I saw a friend of mine or just someone that I knew make something that elicited a response. And I was always attracted to doing that, whether that was comedically or thematically or something philosophically. It just kind of evolved over time, figuring out how to manipulate the frame, how to use technique, use technology, use writing, all that kind of stuff really interested me. And then I just got crafty too, with just different like arts and crafts and that kind of stuff, and it evolved over time. And so many years passed, and now I'm here.
So did you? Because I know not everyone has this. Did you start making films, or were you part of a film class in high school, or was it just like that TV announcement thing that they used to have?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. It was it was some morning announcement stuff. It was. Then it kind of evolved to making YouTube like backyard films and stuff like that. And the early days of YouTube, just watching guys make stupid videos or, you know, like I would do all that kind of stuff. You make like an army video and you're shooting each other with Nerf guns and that kind of stuff. And then at some point, a bunch of our friends decided to take it more seriously. We wrote out scripts, and it turned into an actual narrative. And
this was in high school?
This was like high school and pre-high school. Yeah. Okay. So,
oh, wow.
So it was like before high school, we were doing that. And then we found out our high school had a video production program, which was performing arts section. And it was really cool to be in that. It was actually like an audition process, and you would apply
Really?
to be, yeah,
Holy crap.
yeah. It was very cool. It was, to my knowledge, one of the few high schools that had something like that in New Jersey.
Yeah. What
And
high school did you go to?
it was Howell High School.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it's called FPAC, the Fine and Performing Arts Center. So they had like an acting program, they had a dance program, they had a music program, and a video program. And you basically had to audition with some stuff that you made, and then they kind of would interview you as well. And then they wanted to see if you were going to be a good collaborator. You had some creative inspiration. So they would do a short list of kids that they would let in each year.
Wow.
And then being in that environment, it's like, you're around creators, and it really nurtures that ability. It really creates the clay of your mold in that kind of sense. And yeah, so that was, we've kind of like been, me and some of my friends have been around that kind of stuff for years, like, and just growing at it in different ways for a long time. And then our teacher would always give us films to watch, like he'd be like, you guys gotta watch old movies, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
You can't be just watching, things that are coming out right now. You gotta watch old stuff.
Yep.
And a lot of us at the time, we were like, like we've seen a couple, like we've seen enough. And then as you mature, you realize and appreciate, why old movies are still important, and they're still providing an impact. So I think there was just a lot of cool takeaways, like pre-high school, high school, and then going to college. But yeah, so it's cool.
So being like, that sounds amazing. It sounds kind of like a Votech-ish, but just for the arts or the performing arts. And that sounds really sick.
Thank you.
How does it go? How were you able to bring that culture into Montclair, or were you able to?
Yeah, no, it felt very transitional to me. It felt very similar. Like it didn't feel like I was going to be intimidated by, learning in a class of just film people, because I had been doing it for 4 years already. So that was helpful. And it was intimidating to go to higher education and figure out what that was like with just a film school, and how that developed, what entailed with that. So that was a little intimidating at first. But then there were some people from my high school that had also went to Montclair, so I knew them. I had a little bit of people that I could talk to, as well as meeting new people. And yeah, it was really, through both of those processes with high school and college, it's really just about learning your creative niche, having honest conversations with people, like, what are you into? What kind of scripts do you like to write? What's your creative style? Where do you want to be on set? And kind of figuring out that path in school is really helpful to do that.
And so how'd you find art department, production designer? I'm guessing you found it through Montclair State. Where did it come from?
It was definitely starting to take over more while I was at college. There was probably a bunch of things that led up to that. But really, like I was saying, I had always been crafty from the beginning, and I always enjoyed films that immerse you in different worlds, or really just give you this sense of escapism. And then while I was at school, taking several elective classes, and then just like stepping back and looking at people's sets, it was just like, what can I do to add to the visual chemistry of the story, and how can we add layers to this film without saying anything? And I think that sets, to me, should be just as important as what a character is saying. I think that the visual circumstances around them inform the narrative and the character, and I think that's something I'll continuously try and exemplify in my work. So it was really just driving towards that. And in college, you're always trying to experiment and do bigger and better things, and we tried to do that from definitely like film 2, or at least film 3, to our theses. And it was important to us to try and do something a little bigger each time. And it was up to me most of the time to figure out how could we, design the set a different way, or could we build something? Just really hammering home what the story is trying to represent. And I think that's the baseline understanding of production design for me is giving the story a visual language. You want to inform people based off of the set decoration. Is the character poor? Do they come from a cultural background that's different from something that you are as the audience? Do they live in a world that's 200 years from now, or something completely fantastical? What does that look like? It's up to you to define that with your director. So I think that's something that I've always loved doing, and it's one of the most collaborative parts of filmmaking for me, and that's why I enjoy it so much, because it's new every time. But
going on like this, I don't know, sort of a philosophy. Do you think that the I know this is kind of like existential and very meta, but like, do you think that when going into a movie, do you think that the character informs the environment around them? Or do you think it's the opposite? Do you think that the environment has already been created and this character has to navigate through it almost as if they're in a jungle kind of thing?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Okay.
I think with the personal spaces, like a bedroom or an apartment in general, or something that is very much the character's own, what I've tried to do is throw details of their life into the space. Are they messy? Are they well kept? Like I was saying, are they poor? Are they rich? What's their style? Like, what are they into themselves? So I think the character informs those personal spaces, but then if you look at something like Blade Runner, for example, like you have a character that is just in this world. Like they're trying to navigate the world. The world has kind of been set up for us by these rules, by the style. And they are in the narrative as trying to find their own way in the world.
Through.
Yeah. So I think, and like with the director too, you want your world to reflect your themes and all of those other details that I was talking about. Because they're, if it's like the film deals with corruption, what does that look like on screen? That's up for you and the director to decide. Are there shadows? Are there very dark rooms that they're going into? Is there something that you want to fixate on the government building? We kind of have a general idea of what a government building looks like, but it's up to you to define that in like a muted palette, or is it something that you wouldn't expect? Is it really bright colors, and why would it be bright colors? So it's kind of all manipulating your themes, and then your characters manipulating the spaces. I think it's both. Yeah, I think it's both.
It's interesting because I'm almost sure for almost as like if a cinematographer's idea of like now it's time for like the close-up or the establishing shot, I'm almost sure that's very similar to you in terms of someone's bedroom. Like that's a very classic thing to do in your world. And you're right, it's a place where your character's literally touching. They're part of the construction of their room, but everything outside of that is kind of, they lose control of it if it, like maybe their house, unless they own the house. But even then, it's hard to control everything that you own in your house and how it looks like. But and then you go to a government building or a library, and then they are not the ones who are creating or being a part of that, the construction of that environment. And so, yeah, that's really interesting that it's like you're trying to throw as much information to us in that one space as possible without saying anything, literally.
Yeah, and I don't want to give like one straight answer because, film is a medium of art. It's all going to be different no matter who's in control of a film. So
true.
I think it's really, it comes down to what do you want to say in the space? Is it something the director is trying to manipulate to tell the viewer, or is it an expectation for a period. Sometimes if somebody has, like, let's just say they're doing a 90s period piece, there are certain expectations of a bedroom. What does the bedroom look like in a 90s period piece? You don't want a flat screen. You don't want that kind of thing unless you're trying to manipulate it for the story. Is there a justification for a flat screen being there? So it's kind of all dependent on the director and the designer to come up with justifications and reasons behind why they would change something like that. But yeah, so there's no one answer, I guess.
One thing that I really love to do in film is to, as much as possible, show things that are not, I mean, the easiest way to say is like conventional, but to show things that are not definable, not easily definable. I think that is what I love film most about. It's kind of like, it's on the audience, it's on the viewer to kind of define it. Like, I really do like films where you can just sit back and everything is practically spoon fed to you, and it's a nice time. It's easy, it's relaxing. You don't have to like kill yourself over like, trying to understand Tenet, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so when you are collaborating with directors, how far are you trying to bring the undefinable for the audience? Like, how much are you trying to, through the visual environment that you are creating, how far are you trying to reach where it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense at all? Kind of like if for some reason a bedroom was filled with 4 walls, and one of them was very intentionally red. Let's say the other 3 were, a cream color.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, it's very daring to the eye, and it's trying to tell us something that there is a red wall and there's other 3 cream walls. How far are you trying to tell the audience, or like try to like manage between you and the director of how much are we trying to get the audience
purpose behind it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think
like
it's
because there's like there's like, how subtle do you want to go and how like in your face do you want to go, and trying to find the line between both.
I think it depends on the filmmaker too. I think it depends on if they want to give all the answers away or if they want to leave it subjective and give a call to attention, but it's kind of breadcrumbing trails of clues for the rest of the story. I mean, David Lynch is a good example too. He's just somebody that doesn't give you all the answers to all of his movies. And I think that that's something that he does very well. It kind of gives you little details where it informs other parts of the story, but then there are other things that are simply unexplainable. So I think that it really does depend on the director, and then what they decide to do with it. I'll go as far as they want to go with it, whether that is dialing it down or dialing it up. So I think it's really dependent on what the story is and the artisan behind the story, I guess.
Which do you like doing better? Do you like dialing it up better, or do you like dialing it down?
It's easier for me to discern from like a director who knows what they want. As long as they know what they want, the director knows what they want, and they give me an intent behind it, then I'm cool with that. But if the answer is still a little subjective to the viewer, we've done our job. But if a director does not come prepared and says it could be red, I'm like, well, that's very different than the white around them. Is there a reason behind that? And they don't have an answer for that, then that's a little frustrating. And it kind of it contradicts the rest of what they're trying to do, in my opinion. And it makes this, it feels out of sync, like you want to work for them and bring their vision to light, but then you don't know how to define something because the director hasn't given you a direction to go in. And that's something that I don't want to do. And I don't want to take any creative liberties without them. So I think it's hard to if you don't have a director who's on point with their reasons, then it gets very muddy and very hard to follow. Just making the film, you want to make it with the intent there. The subjectivity comes later, I think. Yeah.
So with, like, let's say if we were going to do a film together, and I do this very often, like with I don't know, did you see any of the stuff that I sent you? Or
yeah,
no?
I saw Cone Mostillos. Yeah.
And so stuff that I like to do is that I'll like throw an emotion or two and basically almost leave the rest for the other person. Does that help you? Does that not help you? Like, I remember like the scene where they're in the, it's very quick, but when he opens the door for the first time and he enters and there's just like that clutter that we see in that room. We see the motorcycle. It's all I told him, Jack Neblong, was just like, just make it like claustrophobic. It's just an emotion, just a feeling. And then he was like, well, do you want this? Do you want that? I said, I don't care. Just make it feel claustrophobic. And then he took his liberties with everything.
Right.
And so true, you're right. You don't want to take that creative liberty where it's too much or too far and you don't know where it is. But sometimes I'll take the responsibility for whatever mistakes or things that I don't like.
Yeah.
But is that even helpful for someone like you, where it's just like, if I were just to throw you an emotion or two and say, do whatever you want, you have the script.
Yeah.
Can you roll with that? Or is that doesn't really play with you?
No, it plays with me. I think because you're giving creative license you trust my abilities in that moment to come up with that emotion. And you're also signing off on it like, okay, I know what I need, but what does that look like? I need some help with that. You know, like you're just calling attention to me to bring something. And like, that's kind of what I enjoy doing too, is sitting down with the director, talk about a space or a scene, and you go through like, does this work here? Oh yeah, that'd be a great idea. Oh, I didn't think about that. You know, like this would be great if we had this here. Oh yeah, that's an awesome idea. You're just bouncing ideas off of each other. And so I think
the
that's
collaboration.
Good. The collaboration is great. But what you're saying too is still giving direction because you know what you need. Like, because you need a claustrophobic feeling. If you had nothing, and you said, just make it a kitchen.
Zach, scene 3, I don't know, just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
To that, you have...
If you just said, make it a kitchen, and it's like, okay, I could make it a kitchen 6 different ways, and it wouldn't probably look like what you need, but because you articulated that you need claustrophobia as your feeling, okay, that's a little closer to what we need. And then once you put it in the space, you're taking things out, or you're adding things in until you get the shot off. So I think that's really fulfilling too. You know, it doesn't feel like anyone stepped on any toes.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like I overstepped you.
You're collaborating, and you know, there's also like there's like those quotes where it's just like 90% of a great film is casting, or 90% of a great film is sound. And I also feel like there's also something to be said about like a cinematographer's success is dependent on the success of like art department and production design. And so how closely are you collaborating with the cinematographer? Like, of course you're collaborating with the director, and they're also thinking about visuals in terms of what's going to be seen through a camera. But how closely are you talking to DPs and cinematographers where there's color? I saw on your resume you really love color theory, and so how are you communicating with them that like the red on this wall or the green on this table is going to be able to make it all the way to post the way that you might want it to?
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't make it all the way to post that you intend, and those are just decisions that
are out of your hand.
Yeah, it's out of your hands, and I've never been in an experience where something has changed so drastically. So I've had good creatives behind that, but I do think that you have to, like, your trinity of people is the director, DP, designer, to come up with that visual look, and then you filter it all down to your other department reps. So I think it's extremely important because, you know, if you have a DP whose lighting style is super warm lighting and that kind of thing, you want a color that accentuates that, and you want to work with that in your own way, especially when you get pretty in depth with colors and that kind of thing. You want to try and do camera tests if you can with the colors itself, and then it goes deeper. If you want to do like film stock, you're using a different type of stock, and this color reacts to that differently than it would this stock. So it gets to be a rabbit hole, but that's why it's important to have those conversations with your visual responsible people. So yeah, it's the DP you really want to work with. And then, you know, how wide is your frame? Because if the set doesn't run that far, you're screwed. You know, like, you want to have these conversations
beforehand.
Early. Yeah, and you're not confrontational about it. You're just kind of, hey, what are you thinking about this? You know, like, I was thinking this. Does that work for you? That kind of thing. Being transparent on those conversations without being aggressive. You know, like, you're not trying to undermine anybody, and you want to always be humble and just bring something to the table. You're all
kinda
working for one purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're all working for one goal.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, do you ever talk to costume, like wardrobe?
Yeah.
Because of, you know, colors and textures and everything.
Definitely.
Like,
yeah. You're definitely considering that. And costumes are still very particular about colors as well. And period costumes, if something was correct there. And definitely, especially with colors, because if there's something that is opposite of what you need in the space at the time, it might be a no-go unless you talk with the director about it. Maybe that's something that they want. So you're trying to get your department heads all on the same page as often as you can. And you can never have enough conversations with those people the entire time you're shooting, before and during. So it's always important to be transparent, have those conversations. Don't be afraid to talk to people. Good collaborators will be receptive and have an open ear to those conversations. But that doesn't mean that they're going to take every bit of your advice, because you're still trying to work towards what the director wants. And that's okay. But if you get those ideas out and then you can go through it and be like, hey, that's a good idea, man, but I think we're going to go with this direction. That's a very civil, creative conversation.
Respectful.
Yeah, exactly.
With dignity. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a very technical question, but, you know, I work construction with my father. And so when, you know, let's say we're creating a house, the whole idea is that the house is never going to fall apart ever. And that, true, there are things that you do in a way that if a pipe burst or something like that, you're able to get to it so that you can fix it. And obviously you can make it as difficult or as easy as you want it to. But when it comes to you, you're almost the complete opposite. Sometimes whenever you're creating something or even a set, you're already thinking about both ends of the candle, whereas you're thinking about, how are we going to be able to bring this down? Because maybe this has to be going into storage, or maybe this all has to be coming down and put into a garbage. Does that make your life easier or harder to think about how every little thing that you're doing sometimes has to always be taken down? And can it be taken down effectively and efficiently in the time frame that you have?
Yeah, those situations always bring stressful circumstances, no matter how prepared you are. But yeah, when you have a good team around you in your art department that is willing to go in the trenches for those things, and you have construction coordinators that are ready to strike the sets and build the sets in general, it's really, it takes stress off of you when you have the people there to help with that kind of stuff. There's no, like with builds, definitely, there's no way I could do any of that by myself. You know, like there are some things when you get bigger and bigger with your scale, you have to have a team around you. So it's always super important that a team is there to be in on those conversations, and it can bring stress, and it always will bring some level of stress. But if you have like-minded people who are on the same page, they've been through that experience as well, it makes that process smoother for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you have good people with you that you can depend on, everything
Yeah.
is 1,000 times easier.
Right.
I feel like sometimes with art, at least in film, of course, it's like you try to paint with big brushstrokes. Like creating the set, you have a wall that's entirely one color, and then you keep going closer to the middle or something. And where's that feeling of like, it's the little things basically, like that you're like, maybe we should add like a coffee mug here or something, like a prop or something, where it's kind of just like it's like an intuition where you're kind of trusting yourself. That it's really my favorite part, because it's you're throwing something down that you haven't ever talked about through the line of the 4 months or however many months you've been talking about it, and like pre-pro and everything. But like Bud, I'm almost sure there was a moment in time where you were thinking about something that completely goes against maybe how like the blunt was placed on the couch, or like how they were arranged in that way in Bud.
Yeah.
Like where is that instinct, and where is that the little things, the subtleties, the accents? Do you love that? Do you not like that? Is it killer? Is it stressful? Is it amazing? Like,
I think it is. It's definitely an adrenaline rush in a different way. There's only so much that planning can do. You can have on paper your set is going to be 7 feet tall, and it doesn't end up being 7 feet tall because your location is, it doesn't permit that.
It's 5
you have
feet.
no space. Yeah, it's so there's with changes and the subtleties and the little meticulous things that you got to add in later. You have to be adaptable. I think what is interesting with film is it will always be evolving as you do it. It's a living organism, basically. And it's not one person painting a canvas, it's 20, or it's 100. So yeah, it's going to be Alfred Hitchcock's movie, but there's a reason that they chose that designer with that director of photography, with that actor. So it's something that people are bringing to the table themselves. And when you get to the set, you're going to assume everything is all good, but then you see the monitor. Hey, that has to be over there a little bit more. You have to cheat the table up a little bit. Can we dim down on the lights a little bit? Can we add something in the background? It's feeling a little empty there. I like that kind of stuff because you're trying to perfect something. And with film, it's immortalized too. With theater, it might change every night in a little sense. Maybe not your full set, but things and actions and little pieces might change every night. But with film, it's like you are getting this, and when you get it, it is done. So you want to get it as perfect as possible. But kind of what I was saying too, you just want to have collaborators who are open to that little change here and there, or making that decisiveness happen and trusting your department heads. I think that's incredibly important. So I like the adaptability, but when you run into those big issues and it's like, hey, location is gone Friday, we don't know where we're shooting this, that's a headache. Like, that's stress. That becomes, how do you deal with things under pressure? And that's a whole different conversation. And honestly, that will get very stressful at points. But you have to kind of talk yourself down and just realize you're on the same boat with people. You're all going through the same things. Okay, that doesn't work. Where can we shoot that? What's the next feasible spot? Who can we talk to about the backup locations? How do we adapt to this situation? And sure, it might sacrifice a little part of what you visually wanted, but a change is okay. It's okay to be in that conversation and just adapt. It's hard, but
Since you are from just talking to you for a few minutes, you're very much a collaborator. You are someone that likes that clear line of communication as much as possible, as being transparent amongst a lot of people. It looks like you've been doing it since before high school, absolutely in high school, absolutely in college. You've been working as a production designer and been in the art department for a while now. Where did this like feeling come from to create 6-shooter shorts? Because you've been like down in the trenches of being in that one department that you like and that you feel like you're comfortable with, and then here comes 6-shooter shorts and Bud, and from just talking to you, it sounds like you know what you're doing. And so where did this come from?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's kind of what you're talking about with the collaborating. Around COVID and even a little bit before COVID, there's just so many friends and colleagues that I have that have always wanted to develop their ideas. And some people didn't get the chance. I didn't get the chance to develop some stories of mine. Scripts, they get stuck on the shelf, that kind of thing. And with 6-shooter shorts, it was specifically made to be different from other short companies by just developing new voices. And I've met tons of filmmakers who may not have the production experience. Maybe they do. Maybe they just want to get in a new pool of people. But a lot of people I've talked to, we're just trying to offer a service for them where we can bring a production to their script, develop their idea, and they say, hey, I have no idea how to make this come off the page. Like, we need some help. I see you've been doing this for a while. Can you help me out with that? And we try and focus on making that a priority for them. Everybody comes away with something too. We produced a project, and then they have a film now to their name, and they can present that to people and say, this is my unique voice, and this is what it was like collaborating with someone for the first time. And instead of just having a short script, they have that drive to make something again. And yeah, I mean, just making stuff is so important that I want to keep doing, as well as working on set for other people. So producing for me has been that. It has been less about the black and white in the book, the numbers. It's more about how can we create this thing with the fixed budget? Is that possible? Having just creative conversations with people and coming up with more projects, because I think what film needs right now is more creatives to come out of the woodwork with their scripts, more indie film. Like, we need to keep pushing that for people. And the state of the industry right now has been so low for so many people that if there's anything that I can do to pay it forward for somebody, and even if they stop making films after this, I know that I've done something for somebody that very much tries to pay it forward for them. And, anything that I have learned, I want to try and put on somebody and give them another segue to go forward with their career. And it's just about nurturing people. I think that's like, I eventually want to teach someday, and I would love to just nurture more creative voices in whatever way I can. Whether that's producing, whether that's designing. I think it's just such a special medium where you all come together for that one purpose, come away with something, and then it's there. It's there for all time. Like, these films will probably go on YouTube or Vimeo, somewhere that will hopefully be there digitally forever, that I can look back on and know that I came away with some experience for people going forward. Maybe people go on to do some very cool things because I gave them a first push, or it was their third film and they just needed a little help at the moment. Like, that's still equally as fulfilling for me. So 6-shooter's always been about let's just pay it forward for people. And because I think the industry just has too much gatekeeping from older generations and the way that the system used to be, that we need to be open-minded. We need to be inclusive to that kind of thing. But
I completely feel that wanting to just be there, to be part of that experience, to be part of that moment. And you definitely feel it like sometimes if some, you can go 3-4 months of just like every day is work, and like film work is not exactly, I always say it's like, it's film, we're not like we're not at war at somebody. If the film production goes down, true, jobs might be misplaced or whatever, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. Like we are privileged to do something in the arts, and it's amazing. And so, but it is truly remarkable to be in that experience. Like sometimes, like when we were doing Con Mis Dedos, there was a day that, we were working on something and we took a moment, and there was like 10 people laid out on the grass that were napping, and the sun was hitting them. And it was just really like, we really all are just gathered in this one moment.
Yeah.
And we're spending it with each other, and we're trying to do something creative and doing something that isn't per se harmful to anybody. Like
Sure.
we're all trying to lift each other up, and that's what it sounds like what you're trying to do. You're trying to lift, you're trying to create those moments and those experiences for people that not exactly are not able to or can't, but just trying to help in any way possible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I could easily see it in the film Bud, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, those 4 friends are having a moment. And true, it's when you're in high school, like 4 of you or 5 of you or 6 of you, whatever your gang was in high school, you would go through that all the time. Like you would just hang, and it probably felt like nothingness.
Yeah.
But I love that film because it brought me back to that feeling of like how important it was to just be with people.
Yeah.
And I feel like it gets harder and harder every single day. And so I really, really love that film for
Thank you.
just the feeling of being with people. Because I noticed that like no one's on their phone in that movie. And to be honest with you, you'd be like surprised in high school with like, oh my gosh, I haven't been on my phone in like an hour or two. Or like you're hanging with friends and you're like, I have no need to like, there's always that like that itch that like to just like get your phone for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I love that film for just, us staying in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of what you're saying too, like the film is very much the shared experience. Coming together for the project is something just really special. And I remember just directing my film too, and I don't know where I was going with it in that kind of sense, and it was a little intimidating because it was the bigger set that I had done up until like high school. And you're the director, everybody's looking to you to have a sense of preparation in that kind of sense, and it's intimidating. But then there are many out-of-body experiences that feel very humbling when you realize all these people are here for this story in this particular moment. And I think that's incredibly special. So, being on teams for other people, or whether it's our films that we're making, it's the same fulfillment to me. It just enriches the experiences that I've had. That's one of the perks. That's one of the biggest perks of the job to me is you're having new experiences with new families each time. You're traveling to places that you might not have otherwise been, and you're just doing something that you will likely never do again with that project. Like it's just exclusive to those fixed amount of days for your shoot, and you come away with awesome stories. You have great camaraderie with people. So yeah, I share the same sentiment, and I really liked how in your film it just feels very artistically driven, and I'm sure that's to the credit of your crew and everything that you've defined with your crew. I love that you put yourself into that as well, and I feel like it showed through very, very clearly. So yeah, I feel like we kind of are on the same page too. It's important to filmmakers to have that shared experience, you know? So
Yeah, I think, you know, I know you kind of missed out on, well, I mean, not entirely, but like with like you graduating in 2020 and like, you know, that's when the pandemic hit. And there was something about seeing the process in Montclair where it was just sometimes like you never see the film finished or something like that. You only ever see the rough draft in class or something like that. And I remember just telling people or just saying to them that it's so much easier if it's not just a task. Like I know it's like my film 3 and my film thesis, and even with the new film that I'm with Boone with, that you have to make it some sort of personal importance because that drives everything. Mm-hmm. That drives why you got through to finishing the script, why you got through, like, I'm almost sure getting up and knowing that you don't have enough time, enough money, enough anything for Bud, you know, it's stressful. You wake up and you're like, well, we just got to do it. We're just going to do the best we can today. Yeah. And then you have to go through post, like at each of those 3 stages and at each of, you know, all the stages of film, if it's important to you and you are one of the important backers of the film, and are part of the people that are like, you know, literally blood, sweat, and tears in the film, it's much easier to finish because I'm almost sure, you know, you probably saw the script and were like, you know what? I want to do this and I want to do this because why'd you want to do it?
Yeah, I think it was a culmination of many things. I mean, Dahlia, our writer, she wrote a very good script. She said, hey, I have no experience making films, but I've written a couple things. This is a 15-page proof of concept of a larger feature that I've wrote. Can you take a look at this? Like, would you be interested in doing that? And I looked it over. I mean, the dialogue itself just jumped off the page to me. It feels like these are people that I know and I've never been in the room with them, but I would like to see that on screen and what they represent. And then it leads to a series of extreme circumstances in the feature and also in the short. So it's cool because if they feel very humanistic. There's no one story that I'm looking for in anything, but for these people that on the page I'm reading, they feel like people that I've met before. And there's a lot of charisma. It's a page turner. It's just something like that people are interested in watching. So she did a great job with that, and I was definitely gung-ho about making it. And it went through its whole process, but I feel the same way. Like we had a quicker turnaround for post as some other films that we've done, but it was still very much driving the bus with her all the way to the end and trying to make sure that we got this creatively right. It fit her liking and just developing it as best as we could. So but yeah, you're putting a lot of passion and energy into it. So
like how many hours are you putting outside of like just set and, you know, people giving their time for that day or however many days. And it's just, you want to make sure that when you create this moment that you're not just dragging people there because you can.
Right.
I think it's more important that like, no, you people like, I really love Do the Right Thing. I don't know if you've ever seen the Do the Right Thing documentary that came with it, but it was just like, he made it very, very clear. Spike made it very, very clear that they were doing something, that this was a movement, that this was, that they were trying to put their voice out there into something that was not just important for that one block that they were shooting at, but important for anybody and everybody that goes through any type of discrimination out in the world.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's the reason why it got to Cannes and almost won the Palme d'Or. Like, we want to bring people into a moment where they are valued. Like their opinions are valued, that they're not just there being the grip or being
Sure.
the gaffer or being the art designer. I think there's something to say about how when we bring people together towards a goal and everyone is trying to express themselves to that goal, I think that's really important. And I think you did some of that with Bud, which
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
really, really love.
Yeah, no, it's and kind of everything that we've been saying too. Yeah, you should always be working towards that goal of the story. When you're first opening those scripts with those directors, with those producers, and you're going into battle to shoot the film, you want to be on the same page, and you figure out what are the points that we're trying to hammer home here. And you're sculpting constantly of how can we add layers to this. So design is just one of those tips of the iceberg. Then you got sound, then you have costumes, then you have director photography, coming up with some visuals that accentuate those themes. And it is such a village of people. So it's definitely important. Always have those early conversations, figure out what you're trying to say, make sure it's clear enough in the script, or at least have the director inform you. And then you're working off of that. You got to lay your base layer brick so you can build a sturdy house,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how was being a producer on this film? Like, I don't know when was the last time that you were a producer, but how was jumping into Bud and producing this when maybe not doing it for like a hot minute?
Yeah. I've I'm trying to think of the gap between between the two. I think I had produced Zach Krasnansky's film, Sea of Dreams, a little while ago. So that was probably like
Gotcha.
2 years in between that. And then I had also executive produced, so just kind of helped fund Mikey and Annie's films. And they're all close collaborators of mine and good friends and very distinct creative vision. So it had been a while. And producing is also a battle because you have to work with the director and the writer. And in Bud's sense too, we were all working together to talk about these ideas and okay, we want to do that, but can we do it for a little less money? Or if we put the money into this, let's just put it all on that and then we keep moving forward. And then with Bud, we raised half of our expected budget. So that was already a hurdle to get over. And then we have to figure out how can we break this down efficiently without breaking the backs of our crew. And the shoot it's definitely always hard. And there are situations that will come up that are out of your hands. And, it's just something that will happen, but it's about adaptability. It's about, okay, there's problems that come up on set. How can we fix that? Let's just take a break. Let's talk this out real quick. And then we move forward. And, there was one situation on set where we wanted to make sure we got the right amount of coverage, but we were running a little behind one day. So there was a point where myself, John, and Sean, our assistant director, we just stepped outside, and Aaron, our DP, we just kind of sat down and we said, all right, guys, like this is really cool. We want to make sure you guys get everything that you need. Let's go through the shot list. Let's figure out what's essential for our coverage. Let's figure out how much time that will bring. And then the other stuff we'll put as our B-list priority. Like we want to get everything that is creatively essential, but in those moments of your back's against the wall, you have to just filter out things that you might not need, or you do have to come down to cutting shots, or some locations you might have to rearrange. So it's very adaptable. Like it's kind of like surfing where you're on the board, but the wave is also fighting you at the same time. And the wave is not going to always go in one direction. You have to adapt and you have to stay on balance. And it's okay if you fall off, but you have to just keep going as a unit and stick to that. But yeah.
Yeah, just persevere.
Yeah.
Basically. I know we talked a little about this, but and I know we were talking a little bit about the industry and why you started and why you created this production company. I know this is a bit loaded, but why are films still so important? Why should they keep being made? Like why should films still be made?
I think Well, like films, they bring new experiences every time with different movies. There's, films that entertain. There are films that ask you to broaden your mind. There are films that inform. Um, and then there are films that make you laugh, make you cry, empathize with things you might not have otherwise understood. So it's a very important medium because it also just allows a connectivity to our human tissue. It's something that either we can escape into or something that calls attention to an important cause, or it allows room for immersion into a fantasy world that is conjured up through imagination, and or it's something that reminds you of your childhood, and other people have had those shared experiences through that. So film is very much like a humanistic art medium, and it's very, now we're in an age of it's very consumable. It's on our streamers. It's almost direct to our TV anywhere you go. And I think it's important that they keep being made to get those responses and to get those 2 hours to escape from the world that's going on, or to bring light to issues in the world that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very important medium, if not the most important artist medium. And because there are so many people that are involved with it, there's no one way to do it. And there's always going to be a new fixation that comes out of it. So I really am always interested in seeing new things. And it's super important that new stories are told from new perspectives, and there's no limit on that. And that's why it's, to me, my favorite medium to follow. But yeah.
Yeah, I think to me, that's like my biggest thing, the perspective, the point of view. Mm. You're getting a new point of view. You're getting a new perspective, and you're getting it in what I think is possibly one of the most immersive ways possible through the film and through this medium. And I think one genre, one perspective that I haven't talked to John Kakuma much. I think I've barely talked to Mikey Smith, but it seems like y'all love comedy. You all love making people laugh, and I don't know, and you know how to do it, because I love making people laugh, but I've tried to write comedically, and it's so much harder than you think it is, because in terms of comedy, if I get to know you for like an hour or two, we can start to try and make each other laugh. And, it's part of, us being comedic and just how we are socially. But when it comes to film, you don't know who's on the other side, and you have no idea who the audience is. And so you're basically trying to fire jokes at what feels like a void, because you have no idea what the response is. And so for you three, and for however many people are involved in terms of your gang and crew and friends, why comedy? What is it about the comedic genre that you love so much? Because Bud is funny. It's really funny. And I've tried, I took a few moments to try and study why it's funny. Of course, dialogue and intricate jokes are really good, and editing and all that. But what is it about comedy, and what do you do to try and land those jokes and try to get those responses that you were talking about in the beginning?
I think it really goes to what the director wants. Like Mikey and John, although they're comedic, they've written comedic films, they have very different styles. John is very much a visual and physical humor, and using technical stuff to enhance the humor, and he goes far fetched. He dives into the deep end.
Those fun little shots of I don't even know what it was.
I don't even know what it was either at this point. It's the fun part, that you're exploring things that you might not get from somebody else. And Mikey is also very succinct and has a great attention to witty humor and just coming up with like a little bit more stand-up focus comedy and that kind of stuff, because he has a
Improv.
good band of people that they're really in on it with that. So they have a really cool like banter with each other that kind of fuels their writing in that kind of sense. So the two different people, but it presents different opportunities. And it's when you're talking about like writing jokes for an audience, like it's hard to do that too in film in general, because a film you want to be as marketable to people as possible, but then you're also walking that thin line of, does that sacrifice my creativity and my unique style? So that's what happens. The studio films a lot is they get too much input from, oh, well, the actor's not good looking enough, or the actor is not what the studio executive imagined as like funny, or, you know, that, so they kind of step on toes, take away from that creative style, and it just becomes some nonsense. So it doesn't all fit. So, but making it marketable is different from kind of what we've done. Like I haven't done a film where I'm like, hey, this has to be appealing to this audience or that.
You guys are trusting your.
It's kind of just like
your instinctual comedic gut. Kind of.
And especially because we're developing as new creatives, like it's important for those two guys to come up with their style. Like they're still inventing their style.
True.
They're still figuring out what works and what doesn't. So it's, if you impede that process, it could just send them in a different direction, and it leads to insecurities for everybody. And that's not something that you want to do to anybody that's still like trying to find their style. So I think that you want to make something that casts a wide net and could be funny to everybody, but comedy is also comedy. I think that's just the waiver you sign off on, that something just might not be funny to some person because they just don't have a sense of humor, or they just
don't understand that sect of humor.
Yeah. So that's a hard reaction to just say, I'm going to get it. Like it doesn't just come naturally from a viewer. It's through a series of techniques in filmmaking and writing and trusting that creative instinct. But yeah,
I always try to ask everybody before we finish, what are some films that are really on your mind lately? What are some films that are just circulating you a little bit?
Do you want like letterbox like favorites, or do you want like
just any? Like I don't know if there's a movie recently that you watched that you really like, or anything. Give me like however many you want to give me.
Well, oh man, this is tough. One film I saw recently was Bring Them Down with Barry Keoghan. And
yes, I was literally almost about to watch that.
Yeah,
was that good?
Very cool. Yeah. It's a very on paper simple concept, but it's because it's two sheep farmers. Somebody steals their sheep, but there's a lot of responses that happens because of that, and there's exposition that is revealed over the course of the film that causes these intense reactions. So it sounds very simple, where it's like somebody stole somebody's sheep, but it's a lot more complex, and it dives into masculinity and
I guess the community and everything.
Yeah, they're like their fathers are very much like oppressive to them, and masculinity. It's kind of like similar to Straw Dogs in a way of like talking
I've
with
not seen
that kind of thing. Yeah, Straw Dogs is that's a Criterion movie. That's crazy. Dustin Hoffman. The Hustler is one of my all-time favorites with Paul Newman.
I love that film.
So good. He's my favorite actor ever.
Yeah, he's great.
He's a fan favorite of mine. I was just talking about No Country for Old Men because the 4K release.
I got that right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there you go. It's a banger. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep up with movies that are circling because there's so many to keep track of. But yeah. So
well, Zach, it was an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you for talking with me. Thank you for giving your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man. It's been great to talk movies and creative trajectories and everything. I'm excited to see where the future leads us, you know?
Of course. Thank you again.